What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We got more sports.
Yeah, we got Larry Bird today.
Larry Bird is making a comeback on the channel. We've done a couple of videos from Larry already.
Yeah, he blew my mind.
Yeah, we did one highlight video and then one trash talking video as well, which was pretty entertaining.
He's funny.
Yeah, and you guys are saying that we got to get to the making the case video. I believe this is making the case for Larry Bird as the greatest player of all time, which should be pretty interesting. I think there's a series about making the case for a few different players as to why you could say they're the greatest, whether it's Larry, Michael, LeBron. I think Tim Duncan is on there. So we also did a poll as well.
Yeah.
Who you guys thought was the second greatest of all time. When we put that together, we thought, well, it's kind of the going theme that Michael Jordan is the best of all time. So who's the second greatest of all time? I think is a better argument.
You picked Larry.
Larry came up as the winner there. I don't know if I agree with that. I think you could make the case for Wilt Chamberlain, but you know, everybody's got their own opinion, and clearly Larry Bird is a big proponent for that argument. So
yeah, I've been really enjoying seeing the videos that we've done of him because I wasn't very familiar with him before that.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously I've heard his name, but I never really saw very much from him.
Yeah, and I'm the same as you. I had heard his name. I knew somewhat about him, but I was blown away to see how good he really was.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's get into Larry Bird making the case for one of the greats.
Basketball is special. The size of the court and the lack of pads or helmets give fans the most intimate experience of a team sport that exists. And because of the different styles that basketball allows for, players develop their own distinct identities and signature styles through their creativity, flair, and athleticism. And although no player succeeds alone, the scoring volume and two-way nature of the sport give individual stars a nearly unprecedented amount of control over the flow and outcome of a game. For this reason, players are constantly compared to their peers and to the legends of the past in order to answer the most hotly contested question in the sport: who's the greatest to ever do it? For many, the question is redundant. They believe in only one right answer: their answer. Others might have their own personal stance, but acknowledge one or two alternatives. But I believe that there's much more nuance to the question of greatness and more answers to it than you might think. By my count, there are 8 players in NBA history that have a substantial claim as the GOAT. It's a subjective thing though. I can't give you a definitive answer. All I can do is make the argument. So today, I'll be making the case for Larry Bird as the greatest basketball player of all time. When it comes to basketball, Larry Bird is the smartest, clutchest player to ever play the game. Now, if you don't think that Larry Bird is the greatest basketball player of all time, you probably hate that I just said that. Those are the kind of talking head sport cliches that surely impact the game but are impossible to empirically measure. Normally, I'd agree with you, but I think that when you talk about Larry Bird, you see those intangibles become real, palpable results. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't believe it. When Larry Bird was drafted by the Boston Celtics in 1978, the NBA needed saving. Attendance was in the toilet, the league had few marketable stars, cocaine addiction had several players in its grasp, and most damning of all, playoff games were being tape delayed. Playoff games at the highest level of basketball were being put in the back seat for black and white movies and network reruns.
Wow.
But rather than join the Celtics after being taken 3rd overall, Larry Bird decided to return for his final year at Indiana State, a decision that would prove to be one of the most important in the history of the sport. Bird's final year saw the Sycamores tear through college basketball, going 33-0 before the national championship game. Bird, already claimed by the NBA's most historic and prestigious franchise, had established himself as the generational talent who would inherit the mantle of pro basketball. Indiana State's opponent in the national championship was Michigan State, captained by the immortal Earvin "Magic" Johnson. The Sycamores lost the championship to the more talented Spartans in the highest rated game in the history of basketball, at any level, still to this day. The stage had been set. The next decade of basketball would be defined by the rivalry between the white hick from French Lick and his Boston Celtics, and the black Magic and his Showtime Lakers. The rivalry between Bird and Johnson is entwined into the fabric of the NBA and is worthy of 100 documentaries. In this video, though, we're going to be looking at Bird's claim of supremacy. Here's Bird's basketball.
That's crazy. I completely forgot about that between Magic and Larry Bird, that it started all the way back in the national championship game for college basketball.
That's wild.
Which is wild because that set the pace for the rest of their careers in terms of a rivalry that would go back and forth constantly. You got the Lakers and the Celtics, like, these two combatants that were already at their throats in college all of a sudden get drafted to these opposing NBA teams.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what other teams could they go to than the Lakers and the Celtics? That's wild. Crazy. And the timing, right, that would need to take place for Larry to be drafted by the Celtics, that's pretty
for them
wild.
To essentially go into the NBA at the same time and continue this.
That's pretty wild when you think about the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
In this video, though, we're going to be looking at Bird's claim of supremacy. Here's Bird's basketball resume. His 3 championships come with perhaps the highest collective degree of difficulty of any player's championships. His 3 MVPs came consecutively, making him only the 3rd player to accomplish the feat, along with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. His 2 finals MVPs are misleading. He was absolutely the best player on the '81 Celtics, but he was only a sophomore, and his 15 points per game in the finals gave the media an excuse to exact a little vengeance on a legendarily difficult interview. His All-Star and first-team selections also come with the caveat that Bird only played for 13 seasons and missed all but 6 games of the '89 season following surgeries on both feet.
Wow.
I can hear you already. A 13-year career, and this guy is supposed to be the GOAT? What color of paint are you huffing, Clayton? Green, obviously. But hear me out. Yeah, Bird's career lasted about 2/3 as long as it should have. But what he did in that time was so impressive and so substantial that every basketball fan acknowledges that he's in the conversation as the greatest ever. Doesn't it matter that those 13 years saved professional basketball, delivered a disproportionate amount of memorable moments, defined the golden age of the league, and produced a career by which all other forwards, before or since, are measured? Bird squeezed every drop of talent out in those 13 years and made it seem more like 30. He didn't just leave his fingerprints on the game. He left so much of his DNA in the sport that it needed a cigarette afterwards. There's something to be said about the candle that lasts half as long but burns twice as bright. Those 3 MVP years stack up with...
So I don't want to pause too much, sorry guys. I just wanted to make mention before we get into the details here, the meat and potatoes of things. That reminds me, Larry Bird, the way he's talking about him there, reminds me of Mario Lemieux in the NHL. So Wayne Gretzky is known as the greatest hockey player of all time, right? But Mario Lemieux, a lot of people debate that because in his short career, Mario Lemieux put up just ridiculous numbers. You look at his points per game and all that kind of stuff, and his scored his first goal on his first shift in his first game. Like, he just had really memorable moments and was very definitive with his career in the short time that he had. And people argue if he had played longer, then he would have been right up there, and people would have been saying probably, okay, you could argue that Mario was the greatest of all time. So that reminds me of Larry Bird. Short, sweet, got a lot done.
Why was his career cut short?
I'm not entirely sure about that. I think it was something to do with his back issues that he had.
Okay.
But maybe we'll touch on that as we go through
They probably
the
will
video.
talk about it.
In the sport that it needed a cigarette afterwards. There's something to be said about the candle that lasts half as long but burns twice as bright. Those 3 MVP years stack up with any other run by any other player. I will put an A+ Larry Bird season up against anyone's. What does an A+ Larry Bird season look like? A full box score, a blowout win, a nearly undefeated record at home, and a play style that could only be described one way: white. Larry Bird isn't just a white basketball player, he's the white basketball player. To describe Larry Bird's game is to thumb through the Hoops dictionary and pick out every cliche about white players. Unathletic, great shooter, good fundamentals, the whole thing. The archetype of a white basketball player is Larry Bird, with one exception. He had an unparalleled understanding of the game of basketball, both as a physical contest and as a mental competition. His basketball IQ infected everything he did and catapulted his career into legend. Bird was a complete player. Jerry West called him nearly as perfect as you can get. He was the league's first great marksman. He could contort his body to shoot from anywhere on the court, regardless of the level of defense. He pioneered the art of the dagger 3 and was the founding member of the 50-40-90 club. At 6'9", Bird's understanding of angles and coordination led to a higher rebounding average than Patrick Ewing, and it made him an impressively adept finisher in his younger years. 86, Bird dropped 47 points on the Blazers, playing the majority of the game left-handed. His lack of quick lateral movement meant that Bird didn't do much when it came to slapping the floor and picking up the opposing point guard, but his size and omniscience gave him the ability to body similarly sized players, read defenses like a free safety, and pick off passing lanes with ease. His passing was transcendent, and I'll highlight it later. And of course you need to know that Larry Bird was a tough effort. He had a superhuman motor and dove for loose balls like a beagle at the park. He was a willing participant in his share of fights, often precipitated by his league-renowned trash talk.
Larry Bird told Robert Reedy the other day that he should have stayed in preaching. That was funny. He had 50 points. I was guarding in my rookie year. He looked at me and he goes, "You can't stop me." And I looked at him and I said, "Gosh, boy, you're so confident." He proceeded to score like 10 straight points on me. Coach took me out the game. He walks by and he's laughing at me.
He was a basketball genius. He'd be a step ahead, a thought ahead, play the game like a chess game.
I'd much rather guard Michael Jordan than Larry Bird because you have to play the game as a thinker when you're playing him. You have to get inside his mind.
If you put all of us in a room, Magic, Jordan, myself, and Bird probably be the guy who walks out of the room at the end of the day.
Did you notice something during those testimonies? Those are some of the best basketball players of all time, and they all sing Bird's praises like they were former assassins who had to go toe-to-toe with John Wick, and they're just happy to be alive. Bird excelled during one of the most talent-rich periods in league history.
Very true.
The abridged list of his basketball rivals goes like this: Dr. J and Moses Malone on the Philadelphia 76ers, Sidney Moncrief on the Milwaukee Bucks, Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer and the Bad Boy Pistons, Dominique Wilkins on the Atlanta Hawks, Bernard King on the New York Knicks, Michael Jordan on the Chicago Bulls, Hakeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson on the Houston Rockets, and of course, Magic Johnson, James Worthy, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the Los Angeles Lakers. Alright, there's no point avoiding it any longer. We have to look at
That, I mean, a lot of those players you may not have recognized.
I don't know any of them except for Michael Jordan. And Isaiah Thomas. I've heard of him before.
Okay. Though that list is like Hall of Fame. It's just Hall of Famers. Hakeem Olajuwon is like looked at as one of the best players of all time. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You could put him in the top, arguably the second best of all time. Like the players that he's playing against in that era versus today. Like that's why
They're just not the same competition level.
not even close. Different NBA game today as well. But like I think that's an argument against LeBron in some respects, is that today who he's playing against is not the same NBA
The talent pool is just not to the same caliber.
No, I mean, there's great players that play today, don't get me wrong, but the rivalry perspective of like hard competitive gamesmanship going on was different. Like today's all offense, right, for the most part, but you had a mention of the Bad Boy Pistons there with Isaiah Thomas, like you mentioned, and like nobody wanted to play against them because you go in there and you might like come out with a black eye and all this other stuff. And they made mention of this and that Larry is willing to go there. You know what I'm saying? He was ready. He was ready.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, let's do this if we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think you would get that from a lot of the players today. They're a little softer, we'll say.
The mental toughness just isn't there.
No.
And of course, Magic Johnson, James Worthy, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the Los Angeles Lakers. Alright, there's no point avoiding it any longer. We have to look at Magic versus Larry. If you have Magic over Larry, it's because he has 5 rings to Larry's 3, had a peak that lasted about 2 or 3 years longer than Larry's, and had a 2-1 record against Bird's Celtics in the finals. Perfectly legitimate, completely respectable arguments. But in the interest of making Bird's case, allow me to retort. For nearly the entire decade of the 1980s, the Eastern Conference was irrefutably the more competitive conference between the two. Considering the competition, for Bird to have made 5 finals appearances is just as impressive as Magic's 9. As for the head-to-head record responsible for Magic's 2 extra titles, he had more help. Seriously, the Celtics' Big 3 and the Lakers' Big 3 get compared all the time historically as if they were of equal caliber, but weren't Magic's accomplices just a step above Bird's? No disrespect at all to Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, but Kareem was the alpha dog on the 71 Bucks and was the best player for at least 2 of the Lakers' 5 titles. James Worthy was the #1 pick out of UNC after winning a championship as the best player on a team that had Michael Jordan on it. Throw in the fact that Magic got to be coached by Pat Riley, one of the most brilliant minds in basketball history, and you could say that the Magic-Bird argument comes down to one thing: luck. So if their careers come down to luck, the question just becomes who you would rather take. Now, I'm not making this video to tell you why you shouldn't take Magic. I'm making this video to tell you why you should take Bird. Not just over Magic, but over everybody. One thing that helps him is the fact that his play would translate perfectly into the league today. A 6'9" sharpshooting forward with eyes in the back of his head who averaged double-digit rebounds in an era against Moses and Lambeer. He'd gobble up boards as a power forward. He'd be an offensive mismatch against everybody as a small ball center, and his off-ball skills and passing would pair perfectly with the flow of today's game. Add in his competitive mania and 3 generations worth of medical advancements, and we're talking about a player who could have stuck around so long they would have had to rename the league. As you've been watching these clips of Bird, I would hope that you would notice something. He always knows where everybody is. Watching Bird play basketball is like watching those monsters from A Quiet Place that know where you are if you make any noise at all. Bird had a level of clairvoyance that bordered on the unnatural. In '85, he ended up 1 steal away from a quadruple-double after playing just the first 3 quarters. His passing was famously infectious and helped transform the Celtics of the 80s into an ideal that basketball teams at all levels are still shown tape of. They moved the ball with precision and intent, always looking for better shots and determined to get the entire team involved in the effort. That fact is almost entirely attributable to Bird and his wizardry with the ball. This acumen also helped Bird become the only player with a GOAT claim to transition successfully into other basketball roles after his playing career. In his 3 years as the head coach of the Pacers, Bird won a Coach of the Year award, coached the Pacers to their first and only finals appearance, and gave Michael Jordan as much trouble as he'd ever gotten in his career in the '98 Eastern Conference Finals. After moving into a front office role for Indiana, he won Executive of the Year in 2012, becoming the only person to have an MVP, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year award. On the court or off of it, inside and out, Larry Bird sees basketball as only he can. That intelligence all
Just the basketball IQ showing off
Yeah,
there,
it's wild. So is Michael Jordan younger than Larry Bird then?
Yes.
So they were kind of like in the same league at the same time, but Michael Jordan was coming in while Larry Bird was kind of coming
Exactly.
in.
There was a couple of seasons where Larry Bird was still, a couple of years where Larry Bird was still
crossover.
there, but Michael Jordan was just coming up and he wasn't in
he
his
was
prime yet.
younger.
So we never got to see prime Bird versus prime
True.
Jordan.
Interesting.
But I was just saying, MVP, Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's wild.
To win one of those is impressive, let alone all 3.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's wild, especially because, as a player, it's very hard to transition to those roles. Like we saw Michael Jordan go to an owner and, didn't go as smoothly as it would have liked. And we've seen a lot of players who go from being a player to coaching. It doesn't go the way they would like. You were gonna
I
say?
was just going to say, I feel like a lot of the time when you're in it and you see the game from a firsthand perspective in your position, it's hard to see it from an objective, bigger picture to be a coach, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think part of that is because, take Michael Jordan, right? Why he may not be a great coach is because he could do things that nobody else could.
Yeah.
Right? So he's on there telling, like, why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? You need to be able to do this, blah, blah, blah. And the player's like, I can't do it, bro, because I'm not you. Yeah. Right? Whereas I think the difference with the reason why Larry is probably so successful is because he's a high IQ player as well. Like they were
Very
just saying, he
analytical.
knows where everybody is on the court at all times. Like the players that he was playing against were saying, like, he's really smart. You got to get inside his head. And so the same ideas can be used being a coach or being an executive. If you understand the game really, really well in terms of what's going on in the court, you can see the
Not
court
just
and the
like for
game for
you.
itself,
Yeah.
then it allows you to transition to these roles.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's super impressive. And then they were also making, I just want to make sure I understand correctly, when they were making the argument between him and Magic Johnson, they were in separate conferences.
Yeah.
So they were saying that Magic Johnson's conference was easier than Larry Bird's. And that's why, even though they didn't get as many final appearances and as many championships, it could still be comparable.
Right. And that's what people will argue about LeBron in the East sometimes, was that the East was really weak in the conference, so he was able to get to the finals all the time because it wasn't as strong.
The numbers are high.
That's why he has a lot of finals appearances, but people argue then, well, are you winning in the finals? That matters. But yeah, that's the point they were saying, is that the Lakers were in the Western Conference, Boston's in the Eastern Conference, and, the East with the Detroit Pistons and all these other hard teams they had to get through, which was much more difficult than in the West.
Lakers getting
and the West was, the Lakers were stacked at that. So
yeah.
Inside and out, Larry Bird sees basketball as only he can. That intelligence also lent itself to Bird's defining skill, making the big plays. Remember, NBA players get paid to win games. James Harden is getting paid nearly $40 million this year because he's supposed to help the Rockets win games. Victory can be achieved in a lot of ways, and the win column doesn't care how it happens. As Mark Sinclair once said,
"It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning."
But when your team is down 1 in a crucial playoff game with 8 seconds left, and you need to hit a shot to stay in the series and keep your season alive, that's where players really separate themselves and earn their money. Love it or hate it, it's the players that come through in the big moments that live forever in our memories. Some players, for whatever reason, were never able to do it consistently. Some players were truly outstanding at it. Larry Bird was the best at it.
Goes baseline, throws it up, man. Larry Bird did it again. He did it again. Oh my goodness. He did it again.
I'm not going to give you the stats about his field goal shooting under 2 minutes with a score that's this close, or tell you who has the most buzzer beaters, or any of that.
Take that for data.
I'm just going to show you clutch moments in clutch situations. 1985 against the Blazers. Bird drops 48 points, including this. Down 1 with 2 seconds left.
Inbound pass, the double team in Bird. Larry, fake, fall away. Hits it! The buzzer! All right!
1985 against the Hawks. Bird sets the Celtics scoring record with 60 points with shots like these.
They open the right side. Bird the fall away. He drills it again. That's the best shooting I've ever seen.
1986 against the Rockets. Not all of Bird's clutch moments were singular. The bigger the moment, the bigger his performance. In Game 6 of the 1986 NBA Finals, Bird clinches the championship with a triple-double in what he calls the best game he ever played.
2 seconds on the shot clock. Bird wants a 3 out of it. He gets it.
1987 against the Washington Bullets. Bird hits one shot to tie it before it's waved off because of a timeout. Hits another shot to tie it up for real.
Crowd is standing up. It goes now to Bird. Bird goes up top.
Off 1 foot runner.
And then in double overtime, down 1, he does this.
It's going to go to Bird. He's got a shot. Get it.
Book it.
And he's got it. It's a 3-point field goal. And that's it. It's all over.
For 3 years, from 1986 to 1988, the three-point contest knew no other champion but Larry Bird.
Wow.
Makes it look easy.
He's still got to drop one here quickly. 14. This is a tie for the money. Yo! Larry Bird!
1987 Eastern Conference Finals, Game 5. Tied at 2 games apiece against the Bad Boy Pistons, this enormous game would put the winner 1 game away from the NBA Finals. The Pistons are up 1 with seconds remaining. The ball goes out of bounds off the Celtics. Isaiah Thomas just needs to inbound the ball to win the game.
Wow.
1 second left. What a play by Bird. Bird stole the inbounding pass.
There are truly too many big games and big moments for me to go through without this ending up as a documentary. But that all leads me to this, what I really want to talk about. 1987 NBA Finals, Game 4 against the Lakers. LA is up 2-1, and the Celtics need to win to tie the series and stay alive. Bird hits a 3 with 12 seconds left to go up by 2.
Bird goes for 3.
Kareem comes down and gets fouled with 8 seconds left. He makes the first, but misses the second. LA ends up with the ball with 7 seconds left, down 1 point.
In the low post, being guarded by Dennis Johnson.
And Byron Scott is in the ball game now.
Magic hits this, the baby skyhook.
Magic with a hook shot, scores with 2.
2 seconds left, down 1.
Dennis Johnson on the inbound. Bird fires it.
What do you think happens? I bet it wasn't that.
No,
When I
did
paused
not
the
think
tape
that.
and the ball was hanging in the air, you thought it was going in.
Yep.
Bird thought it was going in. Magic thought it was going in. I've seen this game before, and I still think it's going to go in. But it didn't. Pat Riley said it himself. We got lucky. And that, a missed shot in the NBA Finals, is why he's the clutchest. Because after he makes the big plays, has the big games, hits the big shots, time and time again, you expect him to hit every shot, to win every game. And in those fleeting moments when he doesn't, when he looks like a mere human, when he looks like everyone else who tries to do what he does, you just can't believe it. That's what Larry Bird did. He made the big plays so often you thought he was going to make them every time. He helped turn basketball into a global phenomenon, paving the way for every Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, or LeBron James who comes through our lives. He played basketball in its purest form and captained a team that is consistently ranked among the greatest of all time. He has the second highest win percentage in the history of the NBA, behind Magic by less than 0.5%, about 10 games. He was the complete package, a player with no holes in his game whatsoever. They called him Basketball Jesus. He didn't get that name without doing something extraordinary. He saved basketball. And he did it by playing it better than anyone else. Here's Magic at Bird's retirement in 1993.
Larry Bird said that there would be another Larry Bird one day. And Larry, there will never, ever, ever be another Larry Bird. To the greatest basketball player ever, but more important, a friend forever.
Oh, so cute.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. This was a really fun video to make, and I'm going to continue to make more of them, so please feel free to subscribe. And while you're at it, go ahead and check out my website, ballsandsuch.com, where I post things about, like, if the solar system was a basketball team, could Uranus hit a jump shot? You know, really important stuff.
I also had no idea that Vin Diesel's real name was Mark Sinclair.
Neither did I. That was
so I learned something also
educational,
completely unrelated, but
on multiple
new
respects.
Today. Yeah.
And that was cool at the end. You know, we saw that I think somewhere before about the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird.
In one of the other videos.
Yeah, but it's really remarkable that we said in the beginning the Michigan State rivalry that was there with Magic off the bat.
Yeah.
And they were at each other's throats all career.
And that's how it ended up.
Literally the biggest rivalry that you could have. Opposing conferences, opposing teams that are, you know, just at each other's throats. And you're talking about the best, right, at the time, because Jordan wasn't in the conversation at that point. You're talking about the greatest of all time between Magic and Larry.
Yeah.
And that's how they finished their career, right, with respect, the ultimate respect being shown.
For sure. Like you said, true players who really love the game, right? And at the end of the day, that's what it came down to.
Yeah, well, I think that's what capturing the essence of competition is supposed to be about, right? You go there and you perform and you're at each other's throats as much as you can possibly be, but at the end of the day, you're still human beings, right? And I think we've lost that kind of that balance. They highlighted it perfectly of like you can be in that mold and when you're on the court hate each other basically.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you know, not hate each other, but you're trying to win at all costs. But it doesn't mean that you have to be beyond that off the court.
And you have respect for other great talent.
Yeah, but now it seems like there's like these cliques and like who you get along with off the court that transpires in the same way on the court, and then in the same light on the court, there's not that competitiveness that you know you want to be the best. So anyways,
very different.
Yeah, anyways, it was just really cool to see that at the end. I'm sure that there's making the case for Magic Johnson as well.
Yeah, oh for sure.
And
I think he said there's 8 of them that he did.
Yeah, and so I figure Magic's probably one of those people, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, what were your thoughts on the overall video?
I thought it was really cool and like how they broke it down into different categories and explained why, you know, I like also too how he said he wasn't arguing against other people. It was more for Larry Bird to show like, you know, how there are these theories of why maybe he's not, but to showcase how that can be, I guess, contradicted or like how he is. And I think like regardless, right, whether he's the best or not, he's obviously insanely talented and could tell that his heart was 100% in the game at all times. Just really impressive.
Yeah, I think, you know, it highlighted, in this one, our first making the case, it highlighted his IQ.
Yes.
You know.
Oh yeah, such a smart player.
His dedication to
I
the
think
game.
also too, like his willingness to do what it takes. Like you see him diving all over the floor, and like there's no hesitation, right? It's just he's all locked in.
Yeah, and his passing ability in line with that, you know, the IQ perspective, I think is really cool to see as well.
And those
so
3-pointers.
Yeah, it's interesting with him as well because he's got the full game, right? You know, he's like they were talking about in this, and I think that's part of making the case is he can shoot. He can pass. He can play defense. He can rebound. He can do everything, right?
Yeah, he can assess. He's smart. He's got the brain for it.
Like Steph Curry today is known as the 3-point GOAT, basically, right?
Yeah.
But like, you look at Steph shooting the 3, it's so effortless and easy for him, but Steph can't do a lot of the other things that Larry can, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes Larry unique is that he can do so much of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then on the other making the cases, I would assume like you get into LeBron, you're going to look at statistical dominance, right? You get into Michael, you're going to look at winning. You get into Magic, you're going to look at, his trips to the finals and the championships alongside of, all the MVPs and everything else. And so I think it's interesting how each player brings a unique set of circumstances to why they're the GOAT.
You could argue. Yeah. I think also too, right, we've already touched on this in this, but the era in which they were playing and what the game was even like at that standpoint, I think is a huge component to that too, right? Like comparing somebody from today to then is very challenging. But the one thing I did like is how he did compare how Larry would fit into the game today, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. And the last point that I'll just make is that they made a claim there that Larry, really made a huge impact on saving the NBA.
Yes. Yeah.
And getting it to the point it is today.
Being here to give those people that opportunity.
Right. The games were being taped. Tape delayed. That's wild to think like how much money is involved in the NBA today.
And they were struggling to sell tickets.
Yeah. And it was Larry, but it was also Magic. That rivalry that we just talked about that came to be and the greatness between Magic and Larry saved the NBA. And so without, who knows? Of course, Michael played a huge role in making the brand of the NBA what it is today as well.
Yeah.
But
that
who knows?
wouldn't have come if they hadn't gotten there first.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
it's all like a domino effect, right?
Yeah. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed our reaction to making the case for Larry Bird. Let us know what you think about Larry Bird, if he's made the case strong enough here for him to be the GOAT. And let us know if you want us to check out any more and who's the next one up that we should do, if we should check in on Magic. I don't know a ton about Magic's game, to be honest. I've heard good things. I've seen highlights, but I don't really know a whole lot about his career. And I definitely know more about Larry at this point than I do about Magic.
Yeah, I don't really know anything about him.
All right, guys, let us know what you want to see next. Hit the like button before you go. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you then.